And welcome to our Reigns on the Cardinals podcast. This week's edition, a lot to talk about. Rob Reigns, STL Sports Page, joined as always by Mike Reigns. And Cardinals game rained out on Wednesday, but Mike, a couple of big stories that we've got to get into with the Cardinals since we had our last chat a week ago.
Yeah, sometimes, it's a week where you're wishing for news, but it's not kind of the news you want to hear currently.
Of course, we've got to right off the top thank our sponsors for making this podcast, as well as all the content on stlsportspage.com, totally free with no paywall. So thanks for the Drury Hotels, Archwell Health, the Rawlings Experience, and AAA Travel of Missouri, our main sponsors for all of their support and getting you this program, as well as the other sites. Hopefully you had a chance to check out our Your Health Matters podcast earlier this week with Jennifer Rosner from Archwell Health. Some very good tips of advice as far as your healthy lifestyle is concerned. Well, of course, Mike, we mentioned the Cardinals rained out on Wednesday. I don't really think the Cardinals wanted to play on Wednesday after what happened to Wilson Contreras on Tuesday night. Anyway, they had no control over it, of course, because it was the Mets' only scheduled trip into St. Louis. That game has already been rescheduled for Monday, August 5th. Cardinals will be coming home from Chicago the day before, scheduled off day. Mets will be making an extra stop on a road trip. They were supposed to have an off day in Colorado after playing the Angels in Los Angeles, so they will go from Los Angeles to St. Louis to Colorado for 3 consecutive games. So not exactly the schedule probably that they envisioned having, and when they thought they'd have a day off in Colorado, but that's what the weatherman dictated today. A long day at the ballpark, but still, I think everybody's still talking about what happened to Wilson Contreras on Tuesday night.
Yeah, certainly not a good thing that happened to Wilson there, being hit on the swing by JD Martinez and breaking his forearm there. Wilson's a guy who you see go through a lot of pain, right? And he's a pretty tough guy out there. And you could tell the second that he was yelling and jumping around pretty quickly that we were in a serious situation here, and it's not good for the long term.
Best player on the team, without a doubt, the first 35 games of the season. Probably the one guy, if you said, could you most afford not to lose to a long-term injury this season? I think everybody, if you'd polled an audience, would have picked Wilson Contreras, and yet he's the one that goes down. And I would say, based on the early forecast, he was scheduled to have surgery on his arm on Wednesday. Early projections 6 to 8 weeks of how long he will be out. But I've even seen one report that he might miss the rest of the season. I would say if you get him back sometime soon after the All-Star break, you're probably lucky.
I think you're lucky that it wasn't a wrist. I think a forearm is going to be a little bit easier to come back than a wrist. Obviously, as we've seen with Tommy Edman, right? So the question is going to be how much mobility, is he losing during that 6 weeks while he's in a cast? And then how much pressure can he put on it to catch, right? And that's going to be the question mark. Luckily, it is his catching hand, so that makes it a little bit better in the long run, and not his dominant hand. But the question is, when pitchers are throwing 100 miles an hour, is that causing pain or pressure?
Gives his hand time to heal after the injury he had to his hand earlier this year when he was having trouble catching the ball. So that's one positive way you can look at it, right? I think the other question.
I was going to say the other positive you could look at is, the way that Ivan Herrera has been playing right now, right? So that's the positive that you can look at in this situation is obviously Wilson has been the best player on the team. So that's, certainly a negative, but the play of Herrera has been a bright spot of this early season as well.
I was going to get to Herrera in just a second, but the other thing I was going to say is the question, of course, is twofold. The question is, one, when will Contreras come back? 2, what will the Cardinals' record be when he comes back after the All-Star break, thereabouts? We're just speculating, of course. The guy that was leading the team in almost every offensive category, 6 home runs, doubles, runs scored, on-base percentage, slugging percentage. Obviously, hitting at either the second or third spot in the lineup almost every night, whether he was catching or serving as the DH. So not only is there going to trickle-down effect of Herrera now having to catch, but you're also going to have somebody else DHing most of the time because Herrera is going to be catching. He can't be DHing. So you lose Contreras really kind of twice in the lineup.
There's 2 ways to look at that, right? The one is, in his rehab stint, Matt Carpenter's been playing very well. So maybe he's a guy that can come in and add a little bit of a needed spark on there. Burleson's been playing well as well of late. So you've got some options there. But, it also is, not to sound like you're beating the dead horse here, but Goldie and Arenado have to be the guys to step up and really carry this load now that we're in a little bit of an offensive downspout, right? So Goldie has to be the guy to step up and really carry this team through this first half of the season.
We're going to get to our Paul Goldschmidt discussion here in a second. I had a couple of thoughts I wanted to say about Herrera and the catching situation as well as the injury. Ali was talking about, Marmol was talking about that this morning, obviously in his office with the media before the game, but got rained out. And he said the one thing that he's been most impressed by Herrera and the changes he's made from a year ago that he thinks has him in a position where he can take over as the number one catcher is his preparation, his understanding of how fast this game can move at this level. He didn't really probably understand that the first couple of times he was up here the last couple of years. He said he gets it now, and he's worked harder to be ready for that opportunity to play. So he's hoping that he can continue to play offensively like he has been. I have one concern about Herrera, and that's defensively. Opponents are 17 for 17 in stolen base attempts against him so far this season. So, he's going to have to step that up a little bit, or teams are going to just continue to kind of run wild against him.
And I think the one positive you have to look at is this pitching staff that he's working with is a group of veterans, right? So of the 4 starters right now, obviously somebody has to come in and fill Matz's role. We can talk about that later. But of the 4 main starters that are right here, they're all guys that have been through this before, and they're all veteran players. So I think you're going to see this pitching staff lean on him to help. They're going to lean on him a little bit to kind of help, whether it's a couple more throwovers or trying to slow some things down. I think you look at a guy like Sonny Gray and a guy like Lance Lynn, and they're going to understand that Herrera needs some help there and try to figure out ways to do that. So I think that's one of the positives to help Herrera too.
And one of the things people always talk about is opportunities. Somebody's misfortune of an injury does give an opportunity to somebody else. So not only does it give a chance for Herrera to play a little bit more, it also gets Pedro Pages back in the big leagues as the backup catcher. They really like him defensively. So, it's a chance maybe that you're going to see him sharing some of those responsibilities with her. I did confirm with Marmol this morning before the scrum that Brendan Donovan is still their emergency catcher. So when you only go to 2 catchers, you always still have to raise that possibility, of course, of who would come in to catch if you had to have an emergency situation. He said it would be Donovan. I remember a couple of years ago we had Brendan Donovan appearing at our Rainbows for Kids STL Sports Page bash in Florida at spring training, and he had told me a couple of days before that about all the different gloves he had for all the different positions he was playing, and he had to pull them all out of this bag that he had in this bag in front of his locker. And I said, "Well, where's your catcher's mitt?" And he goes, "Oh, it's in the car." So he did have one. So I'm assuming he still has that one as well. The other point I wanted to bring up about the catching situation before we move on to a couple other topics is, I think the other thing that's going to come out of this injury, and it's an unfortunate injury, but maybe it's going to raise awareness of what's going on with all these catchers interference calls. I mean, there's just been an explosion of those calls the last couple of years, and I think that they're lucky probably that somebody hasn't gotten hurt beforehand. I mean, a lot of guys have gotten hit with the backswing of a hitter's bat or their glove hitting the bat. But this is the first time that really somebody's gotten seriously hurt because of the actual swing hitting the bat. And it comes down to one simple thing: the catchers are too close to the plate. The catchers are too close to the bat, trying to steal that, framing the pitch so they can get called for more strikes.
And I'm also going to be the guy to say, on the flip side, I think it's the batters in the box are too far back.
Mm-hmm. That's quite true too.
They're trying to move back as far as they can to take as much advantage of, reading the pitch as they can, right, and timing. But I think it's a combination of both, right? And so whether that becomes a line that they set there that neither one of them can cross or something, I mean, I think something has to happen just from a safety standpoint. I understand the concept of wanting to get more strikes from the catcher standpoint. I understand the batter wanting to get more time to see the pitch, but something has to change from a safety standpoint, I think. As we look at this situation with the catchers moving too far forward, right? Is there something that can be done to look at that, right? And some players would say they understand the risk, and that's what Contreras said when talking about it, right? Is he understood the risk that was there of moving forward. He understood what needed to happen, and he wasn't blaming anybody for it. And Miles said after the game, that he thought the same thing, that maybe something needed to happen with a line being drawn there or something as we look forward. But certainly an unfortunate situation as we look forward, and it's something that we need Herrera to really step up and do as much as he can here, right? The nice thing is, with the way that Herrera's been playing, you can always DH him and put Pages in there, who they think is a better defensive catcher. That's what they can look at. They've got a few question marks to figure out in this lineup, though, as they move forward, right? Because you look at the offensive struggles that they've been having, and you look at the way that they're, not beating teams that they should be, right? You're dropping 2 out of 3 to the White Sox and not really playing competitive baseball.
Sorry about our little technical glitch there, but we're about done with the catching situation right now. Anyway, I will say one thing else about the catching situation. As we mentioned, the opportunities to next man up, and some man's misfortune is another man's opportunity. Wade Stouse, our friend from St. Louis, Southeast Missouri, who gets the promotion from Springfield to Memphis to backfield for Pages coming back up to St. Louis. So good opportunity for Wade now at the AAA level as he makes that jump from AA. All right, moving on. Paul Goldschmidt scheduled to have the day off on Wednesday before the Cardinals got rained out, even though he'd been 12 for 22 in his career against Jose Quintana. Obviously, the reason that he's in a 0 for 24 slump, the second longest slump of his career. He went 0 for 26 in 2018 when he was with the Diamondbacks. And Mike, I know the Tuesday night's game, a couple of really frustrating at-bats. He came up a couple of times with the chance to do some damage and give the Cardinals the lead, and didn't get it done both in the 7th and the 9th innings. So he's just really, really fighting it right now.
It's really strange to look at, right? Because you've never seen him struggle this much, and he just looks completely lost. And so some time off for him could probably be good, right? Maybe it ends up being a few more days here, just so he can kind of relax, regroup. And I think the biggest struggle with him is the fact that a lot of the other offense around him is not doing anything else either. And so it gets highlighted by him, and he's the type of player who doesn't want to let anyone down, right? And he wants to be the guy, and he doesn't want it to be about him. Well, there's so many times right now where it's him that's not coming through.
Yeah, as we mentioned, the domino effect again. Contreras not going to be hitting in the top second or third spot in the lineup. Somebody's got to hit there, and obviously you would think, well, Goldschmidt or Arenado, you're true proven guys, but if they're not getting the job done, they're going to have to drop them, especially Goldschmidt, down to a little bit in the lineup. So that's going to be another trickle down effect of who's going to hit second, who's going to hit third in this lineup.
And what do you do with Gorman, right? Because it's kind of the same thing. I mean, he's hitting a little bit better than Goldie, but not a whole lot more. So you can't really move him up either. Maybe it's time, like we've talked about before, for a guy like Mason Wynn to step up and slide up in that role, or the guy that probably makes the most sense is for Nootbaar to step up and be that guy.
They've got a couple options at first. Burleson can play first. They do have Donovan who can play first. He's done it in the past. You mentioned Matt Carpenter. He's playing his second rehab game in Memphis. Had a couple of games in Springfield last week, but he got a couple of games rained out, so he's obviously moved his rehab over to Memphis. I just checked the box score. He's 0 for 3 with 3 strikeouts and a walk. So he did hit a home run on Tuesday night. So, it's just a question of nobody's really said how long they expect him to be in Memphis to try to get his swing back. So he, of course, will be another option either as a DH or as a first baseman if you are trying to give Goldschmidt a couple of days off. I think of all the things that have happened to the Cardinals offense so far this season and the tough struggles that they've had, which have been documented by us on this program, by everybody else in St. Louis in print and on the broadcast side, the biggest one is trying to figure out what's happened to Goldschmidt and how he comes out of this.
It's really, really strange, right? Sometimes in baseball, they use the term of getting old fast, and maybe that's what's happened. I don't know. Or maybe he's just, in his head a little bit, needs to relax and quit, overthinking things and just go back to the simple aspects of baseball and hope that can get right. But it's certainly highlighted when the rest of the offense is not coming through and nobody's really overly doing anything, right?
Right.
I think the other guy that they wish could, figure it out and come back sooner rather than later is Jordan Walker, right? Because that's a big key piece of this lineup that you're missing too.
You kind of thought 4 hits in that game in Detroit that maybe that would turn his season around, but it didn't happen. And then of course the whole team got home and lost 2 or 3 to the White Sox, which I don't think anybody thought would happen. And then of course lose to the couple of games to the Mets before the rain out on Wednesday. That leaves the Cardinals with a 15-21 record. They've lost 4 in a row, 6 of their last 7. As they head to Milwaukee to begin that 7-game road trip, 4 games in Milwaukee and the 3 games against the Angels. So, really kind of a critical part of the season, I think, right now for the Cardinals, losing Contreras, playing poorly offensively, and then, playing your division rival next 4 days.
The other hard part that's frustrating about the whole thing too is when you look at the fact that the starting pitching has been as good as it has been, right? You look at Kyle Gibson's last start, and you look at Lance Lynn's last start, and obviously Sonny Gray's been a big bright spot. So they're not giving up a whole lot of runs, but they truly feel like they're the issue too because the team's not scoring. So if they're giving up runs, then you're not going to win.
Sonny Gray was scheduled to get the start on Wednesday because of the rainout. He'll be pushed back and will start the opener on Thursday night in Milwaukee. Ali Marmol saying on Wednesday that the rest of this rotation this weekend to be determined. Cardinals were trying to figure out what to do about Friday's game, which was the next start for Steven Matz's turn in the rotation. Liberatore, of course, got that start on Sunday in what they turned into a bullpen game. I think he probably would have started on Friday, and he might still after Lance Lynn was supposed to pitch on Thursday night if Sonny Gray had pitched on Wednesday, but the Cardinals said they're going to get that rotation kind of figured out either after the rainout on Wednesday and on the plane flight to Milwaukee. But they may elect to still put somebody else in that second game in Milwaukee and then give Lynn and Gibson an extra day of rest, or they could just bring those guys back on their regular day and then not need that next starter until the opening game in Los Angeles on Monday night. So stay tuned. We'll know all of that here in the next couple of days. But the good news, of course, is that Gray gets to pitch on Thursday against Milwaukee.
And it's not anything against Liberatore right now, but I think you would rather see Lance Lynn start that game on Friday, especially because the limited number of games you now get against teams in your division, and you have to win these games, right? I mean, I don't say it's a critical point, but division games are incredibly critical in a year when you don't play the division teams as many times as you normally would. So that's why I think that, you need your everyday regular starters that are built up, ready to go to give it your best shot and hope the offense can come through a little bit.
And I think the other part of that, too, is that, if you're going to go with Liberatore, no fault of his because he's been pitching in the bullpen for the last month, he's not going to give you more than 4 or 5 innings at the most. I mean, 60 pitches, probably 65 would be about all you could expect him to pitch in that game. And then that puts the extra stress on the other relievers in the bullpen. So, I think you're probably my guess is that you keep the main guys pitching in that series and try to figure out what you want to do by Monday night against the Angels.
If you couldn't get it done against the White Sox, you got to find a way to get it done against the Brewers.
Cardinals, of course, we said head to Milwaukee and Los Angeles. The Rob Raines edition of the traveling minor league show heads to Memphis on Thursday. We're going to go down there and see what's going on with some of those guys. A lot of familiar names in that lineup down there in Memphis now, and I think Zach Thompson's pitching one of those games. So a lot of guys that we want to kind of check in with and see what's up with Victor Scott II and Jordan Walker since they've got signed down there, and of course a couple other guys. Ryan Ludus is on that ball club, the WashU grad that I thought might have a shot at getting the promotion to the big leagues when they put Gallegos on the injury list, but they went with Chris Roycroft, again, another guy that deserved that opportunity. So, and I'm not sure exactly, as we mentioned, how long Matt Carpenter is going to be down there on his rehab assignment. So I haven't had the opportunity to get down to Memphis yet this year, so looking forward to that.
Yeah, it should be an exciting time to go down there and see how those guys are progressing and coming along, and be nice to check in with Jordan Walker and see how he's progressing and see if there's a timetable and how he's working things to get back up here.
Exactly. So we'll have all that covered for you, as well as obviously the Cardinals coverage from Milwaukee, as well as the Cardinals head out there on the road trip. Don't forget to, again, if you didn't get a chance to check out our other podcast this week, Your Health Matters from Archwell Health, be sure to do that, and appreciate the comments we've got about that already. Also, if you haven't had the opportunity or haven't figured out how to sign up for our newsletter yet, I want to encourage you to do that. You can click on the newsletter link on the STL Sports Page homepage, or send us an email to stlsportspage@gmail.com, and we'll get you signed up for the newsletter. We do a lot of contests, do a lot of events, and that's where you get all that information about those events coming up. So, well, we'll see what happens with the Cardinals on the road trip. As we mentioned, going on to this road trip with a 15-21 record, lost 4 in a row, 6 out of 7. Haven't played very well at home, so maybe going on the road will be a good thing for them.
Let's hope so, right? Because their record at home is 6-11. So it'll be nice to see them put some nice games together against Milwaukee, and hopefully we've got some exciting things to talk about when they come home.
So be sure to check out all of our coverage of the Cardinals here on stlsportspage.com. For Mike Raines, this is Rob Raines reporting for the Raines on the Cardinals podcast.